Hey guys, Jeff over here at glinthelp.live for our third video where we're going to be talking about manager hierarchy and how employee ID and manager ID can all play together to make sure that you're getting the results that you're looking for. Just to kind of break that down a little bit further, the manager hierarchy is what tells Viva Glint who reports to whom in your organization. And it's built by just linking the employee ID here with the manager IDs, which we have not filled out yet. Employee ID is a unique code for each person. So we talked about that in an earlier video, but this is how Viva Glint identifies each person. The manager ID is just the employee ID of that person's manager. So when Glint matches these two fields, it just automatically builds a reporting tree. So it actually works pretty easily. You just have to get it set up initially. Let's kind of do some quick examples here. Let's say, for example, we know Emily Dickinson is the manager of Thomas Edison and Harriet Tubman and Charles Darwin. And that's essentially how it would look there. But then maybe that we would say Martin Luther King is in charge of Emily Dickinson and maybe Pablo Picasso as well. Because we're setting it up this way, Viva Glint knows that Pablo Picasso reports to Martin Luther King. And this hierarchy ensures that managers only see survey results for their own teams. Leaders get results that roll up the org chart so they can see both direct reports and everyone further down. But essentially, it just works like this, where we need to make sure that employees have their manager's employee ID listed in the manager ID field, and everything's going to be built out. So then you might ask, well, if it's that simple, then why are you making an entire video about it? Well, there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind. For one, in a normal situation, we're going to see, and I'm going to go ahead and screw up these really quickly, but I just want to sort of illustrate a point. We're going to say that there's employee IDs for every single person that comes in here, except for one. And that is generally the CEO of the organization. The CEO of the organization, we actually leave the manager ID blank. If we have more than one blank, this is going to cause a problem with your hierarchy, and the hierarchy won't be able to be built. So hopefully you have an HRIM system that's going to automatically build all of this out for you so you have accurate reporting. And once you have that ready, we want to make sure that the CEO has that manager ID blank, and then we're going to be ready for an upload. Now, as you probably saw, I just went ahead and threw that together. These IDs are not accurate at all, so if I go ahead and do an upload here, it's going to fail. But I want to go ahead and talk about the process that you're going to want to do. First, let's hop back over to Viva Glint. Now that we're back in Viva Glint, we actually need to prepare Viva Glint before we actually do that upload that includes all of our manager hierarchy data. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. We're going to go to General Settings. Once we're in General Settings, I'm going to kind of scroll up to the top. And here is what's really important for us. I want to go ahead and select our top level manager, which we talked about earlier was Albert Einstein. Once I go ahead and select that, I need to make sure that I actually scroll to the top and I click on Save Changes. Now that I've gone ahead and saved Albert Einstein as my top level leader, it's time to go ahead and do an upload. And just so you know, I went back and I modified my CSV file so that every user reports to Albert Einstein. Since our attributes are now set up and we only want to make changes to our employees, I want to go ahead and select the center tile here. I'm going to go ahead and select Before we upload, I want to take a second to talk about this checkbox here. When I select this checkbox and process the upload, all employee records are going to be marked to inactive if they're not included in this file. This is a somewhat dangerous checkbox to utilize, because sometimes admins will be maybe trying to update 1, 2, or 5 employees for one reason or another. And when they check this checkbox, it makes everybody inactive, and that can even lead to login issues with some admin users. So you want to be really careful about using this. Sometimes it's appropriate to use it, but there's going to be a lot of times where you're going to not want to use it, and I would recommend paying very close attention every time you're doing an upload. If you shouldn't be using this, do not use this. Okay? Really, the big issue is for admins mostly. For your regular users, it's an easy fix, generally speaking. But since I have that unchecked here, let's go ahead and continue forward. I'm going to go ahead and upload the file. One of the things that's worth noting about Viva Glint is that this is not an animated bar. You're going to have to hit refresh a couple times to see its progress. Now, usually it will fail quickly, but one of the things about Viva Glint is that when you're troubleshooting, you're basically doing in increments of 5 minutes. So when you upload something, it's a good time to take a stretch, go grab a coffee, relax for a second, because you're going to be waiting a while. The ironic part is that whether you have 20 employees or whether you have 2,000 or 5,000, the amount of time ends up being roughly the same. So you can't go, oh, well, I'm only uploading 5 employees, this should be faster. It doesn't work like that. It ends up being the same amount of time regardless of how many employees are included. Since this is taking a little bit of time, I'm actually just going to go ahead and fast forward it for when this gets completed. Okay, now that we see it's completed, let's go ahead and review it. So I can see here that I have 0 employees moved to inactive, 2,824 employee changes, even though I didn't make that many changes, 0 employees added, and 2,256 errors found. Wow, that is a lot there. But I'm going to go ahead and confirm this anyways, because I know it's making the changes that I want, and then we're going to talk about how we deal with errors that are found. So let's go ahead and confirm that import. Confirm the import is still going to go ahead and take a couple extra minutes, so we're going to want to continue to refresh it, and we're going to see that it's going to complete pretty shortly. Okay, now that everything's processed, we can go in to check and see how everything is looking. I'm going to go ahead and start with Amelia Earhart here. And what we're going to be looking for is the current manager hierarchy. If we don't see anything in here, we're going to know that there might be a problem. Then if we go ahead and continue down here, let's pick Galileo. With Galileo, we can also see that he's part of Albert Einstein's team. If I go to Albert himself, we're going to find that he has no reporting manager. And we know that that's actually true because that's what we're looking for. I want to show you how to take your error report and turn it into something useful so that way you can resolve your own issues. It's kind of simple in a way and also very daunting. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that when you have errors that are hierarchy based, a lot of times they have a multiplier effect. So even though you have 1 or 2 errors, you're going to have hundreds, maybe thousands of errors. I've gone ahead and just simplified this error just so we can see an example, but you kind of have to think about it where if I mess up the CEO, that's going to affect every employee that's underneath him, every manager underneath them, and so on and so forth. And that's why I say it has a multiplier effect. So try not to get too overwhelmed if you get an error report about, manager warnings. And just try to start going down the list and see if you can identify some trends, and you might surprise yourself that it gets resolved easier than you think. But to start off, what we want to do is when we're looking at our error report here, we can click in here and we can see external user ID is mapped to manager reference EMP100, which is not on file or system. So what it's saying is that, hey, you're trying to take employee 1012 and I can't even find employee 100. So we would want to go ahead and hop over to our CSV file so that way we can see what's going on. So what is a good best practice, even though I have a small example list, I'm going to click on the employee ID column. I'm going to do Control F, and then I'm going to put in the employee ID number here. And I can see that it's Jane Austen. Well, let's take a look at Jane Austen here. When I'm looking at Jane Austen, I can see instantly that my employee manager ID here doesn't actually follow the format. So I can see pretty clearly that, hey, this is an incorrect employee ID and I need to make a change to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add employee 1001. And now that's going to resolve that problem. Let's look at the second one here. We have an employee ID here. I'm going to go ahead and search for it. Whoops, wrong page. Okay, and in this case it's Isaiah, and we have the exact same issue here. We have a employee ID that is not accurate because that person doesn't exist. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that right here. If I were going to go ahead and do that upload again, it would resolve these two issues. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to go line by line, which might be a little bit painful, but you might start to see some trends. So take a look. If you find that there's a top level CEO issue or something like that, when you fix that, you can go ahead and run it again, and you might see that your employee errors decrease by, 300, 400. It just depends. But unfortunately, there's not always a straightforward answer for this. You do need to kind of go down your error report and just start to investigate. And that's how I recommend it. Start with the employee. Start with the first employee. Does that look right? What does the error over here say? What's it referencing? So start there, and then that's going to help you figure that out. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and stop here for now. I hope this has been a good introduction and helps get you moving confidently. Before we wrap it up, I want to stress one key point. Do not launch your survey if you have manager hierarchy errors. Once a survey is launched in Viva Glint, that manager hierarchy is effectively written in stone for the duration of that survey. Any changes you make in your source systems, whether it's adding a new manager, doing a team restructure, or updating your HR platform, none of that is going to sink into the survey once it's live. So that's why I always say it's kind of like when you launch a survey, it's written in stone. That means any errors and who reports to whom, or if someone's missing from a manager's team, those mistakes are going to stay locked in, and we can't attempt any changes until the survey closes. Even when that does happen, the only way to fix issues like that after a launch is through a retro update, and believe me, that's not very fun. It's time consuming. You really need to be experienced to pull it off, and mostly it's just going to delay your reporting. So it's definitely something you want to avoid if possible. But if this video has helped you avoid all that situation, and hopefully it saved you some time and a headache, feel free to support the channel through buying me a coffee, link in the description. It's totally optional, but hey, it's appreciated. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.